Okay, friends, this is Daniel Day 7, and I've got some special guests for Daniel Day 7. I got Lottie right here. I got Lucy. You can see Lucy back there, I think. And then Gracie. Gracie's 16, and Gracie is probably not going to be jumping up here, but Gracie is around here also. And this is actually a good day to have these pups with us because what we're going to talk about today has a lot to do with the difference between humans and animals. Okay, so we're going to read the end of chapter 4 today, all right? And I'm just going to go and warn you. The end of chapter 4, you're going to read it and you're going to think, this seems like a fairy tale. This doesn't seem like the kind of thing that actually happens. But what I want to get to is what is underneath this, why the author records this, and what it is that God might be up to in Nebuchadnezzar's life. Because what I want to suggest to you is that what happens to Nebuchadnezzar here actually happens to us all the time. Now, maybe not in as extreme of a way, but that it actually happens to us all the time. Okay, to get us set up, have you noticed as we've been reading through Daniel so far, we're going to wrap up chapter 4 today, that so far, one of the main characters has been Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, he's introduced in the first verse. He's the second person mentioned. And it's a book by the title Daniel. Daniel is certainly the main character, but Nebuchadnezzar plays a big role in these first 4 chapters. And we actually wrap up his story today. He's done after chapter 4. But if you haven't noticed it yet, we've actually seen Nebuchadnezzar grow and change a lot. He's set up as the evil king in verse 1, and he fills that role well, right? Not a good guy. But he's more nuanced than that. And he experiences things based on what he sees happen through Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It really gets us to the bottom line of this whole deal that if we want to make a difference, we have to be willing to be different. When Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they act differently than all of the others around them, they make a huge impact in Babylon, and in particular, in the king's life. Look at this. At the end of chapter 2, we begin to see this. At the end of chapter 2, Daniel's interpreted a dream for Nebuchadnezzar, and the king says to him in verse 47, the king answered and said to Daniel, truly your God is God of gods, the Lord of kings. He's not saying there's only one God, but he's saying your God seems to be the best God, which seems like a crazy thing for him to have said. This is a foreign God, one that he's never heard of, likely, until he's gone and captured these folks. And now he's saying that this one's the best God? It seems pretty crazy. And then when you get to the beginning of chapter 4, after you've had the fiery furnace deal with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, this is what he says. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. This is what he says to those people. Peace be multiplied to you. Nebuchadnezzar is talking about peace. Peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show the signs and wonders that the Most High God calls the God of the Israelites, the God of the Jews, Yahweh, the Most High God, what he's done for me. And then you get a verse of poetry that he writes about this God. I mean, it's just wild. Like, what is happening with Nebuchadnezzar here? Again, what we got to see here in part, and then we get to kind of the main thing that's happening here, is that by being different, they are making a difference in this guy's life. Had they been just like all the other ones, then Nebuchadnezzar isn't impacted in this way, but he is because of them. But Nebuchadnezzar still doesn't fully get it. Nebuchadnezzar has one more big lesson to learn. It's a big lesson for us also. So let's look at the end of Daniel chapter 4, beginning in verse 28. There's a truck in the alley. Lucy's gonna get it. Okay. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. So picture, he's the king, he's all hopped up on himself, we'll find that out in a second, walking on top of the palace, looking out at a Babylon. And the king answered and said, is not this great Babylon? Just like looking at the majesty of the city and imagining the kingdom that the city is the capital of. Is not this great Babylon, which I have built. Pay attention to the first person singular pronouns here. We should always pay attention to when and how frequently we use first person singular pronouns. I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty. My power for my majesty. So you see, he clearly believes, and you can understand why. I mean, he was a general in Babylon who was very successful, and then he became the king of Babylon. You can see why he's hopped up on his success, but he's got a lesson to learn here. While the words were still in the king's mouth, before he'd even finished the last syllable, there fell a voice from heaven. So there's another voice that came. And the voice didn't come from the earthly realm. It broke through the spiritual realm, from the spiritual realm into the earthly realm. And it said, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you. You want to know whose kingdom this really is, whether this is the voice of God or the voice of an angel. You want to know whose kingdom this really is. It's already gone from you. And even more than that, something's going to happen to you. You shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. And you shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. So not only have you lost the kingdom, but it will be gone from you for 7 periods of time. During that time, you will be like a beast. And only when you know who this all really belongs to will things be put back in order. Immediately the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven out among men and ate grass like an ox. So he's out in the wilderness eating grass, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, meaning he's sleeping underneath the stars, till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like birds' claws. So picture him out there, eating grass, hair growing long, dirty, fingernails and toenails like eagle's claws. What has he become? He has become the image of what happens when human beings are cut off not from the physical world, but are cut off from the spiritual world. When we become just physical beings and are cut off from the spiritual realities of the world, then what are we? We're just like Lottie. We're just like these pups here. And what makes us different from the beasts? I mean, look how cute she is, right? I mean, she's the best. Clearly God's creation, right? These other two also. Clearly God's creation. But what makes us different from the animals? It is that not only are we magnificent physical beings, but we are connected to the spiritual realm also. What is it to be human? I mean, scientists will tell you, while they can understand all kinds of things about what makes humans unique from the rest of the animal kingdom, what they can't understand is our consciousness. They can't quite get to that. They don't understand it. How is it that we are even aware of ourselves at the level that we are? How do our minds work at the deepest levels? We don't know. But what the scriptures always pointed to is, while we may not know how all of this works out biologically and whatnot, that what makes us unique is that we are connected not just to the physical world, but we are connected to a spiritual world that is around us also. There's a spiritual world beyond what we can see, taste, touch, feel, and hear that is very, very real. That at times feels very close to us and at times feels very far, but that is all around us. And what God does to Nebuchadnezzar is says, okay, you think that this is all about you, huh? You think that you can control all this, that this is all about you. I'm going to give you a picture of what it looks like for you to be cut off from the spiritual nourishment that I'm always pouring into you that you don't even know about. And he becomes a beast. Does that not happen to us? I mean, maybe not in that extreme, but does that not happen to us? Are there not times in our lives where we simply become like the other animals? Not in the sense that we lose our ability to speak necessarily, not in the sense that we're living out underneath the stars, but in the sense that what is driving us is just our gut. What's driving us is our instincts. What's driving us is our bellies. I mean, what is it that drives these dogs? What is it that drives everything else in the animal kingdom? It's just their instincts. The need for food and the need for water. The need to reproduce, the need for security. It's what drives them. And is it not so often the only thing that drives us also? When we forget that we are not just physical beings, but we are spiritual beings as well. Somebody described it one time this way. Think about the difference in a steamboat and a sailboat. They're both ships. What makes them different is what drives them. One is driven by steam, and one is driven by the wind. Do you not look around and see that there are different kinds of people? There are those that are driven by just their bodily desires. And here, I'm not just talking about what we physically do with our body, but I think you know what I mean. They're just driven by the things of this world. And there are those that are driven by something higher. Those that are driven by the Spirit, not just in what they do with their lives, big picture, but in the little things also. And can we not look in the mirror? Can we not look at our schedules and say there are times in my week when I am driven by the Spirit, and there are areas of my life, times in my week, when I am just driven by the things of this world. May we be people who more and more are driven by the Spirit around us. I'm going to let you finish the rest of chapter 4 of Daniel. It's pretty straightforward, but notice this. When Nebuchadnezzar is restored, is when he turns his eyes towards heaven. That doesn't just mean that he looks up. It means that he looks towards that spiritual realm and towards the one who lives there. The Lord of Lords, the Most High God. When he looks towards God, he's restored. Not just because he humbles himself, but because he also opens himself to the reality of something beyond the physical world. To the life that is truly life. That comes by being connected to God. So God bless you, friends. Happy reading, and I'll see you later this week.